Welcome to Congress in Context.
Hey there.
So today we're taking a deep dive into, a single day in Washington. It's a day where politicians fought over deporting dog abusers, threatened to leave TSA agents totally unpaid, and warned of a ticking time bomb that will cut your retirement funds by like 24%.
Yeah, it's a lot. And, sometimes watching the federal government feels kind of like watching a split-screen television.
Right.
On one side, you have this high-octane blockbuster playing, loud explosions, intense drama, people shouting across the aisle. But then on the other side of the screen, there's this quiet, local indie film playing.
Right, where people are just doing the necessary, unglamorous work of keeping their communities running.
Exactly. And we usually only pay attention to the blockbuster side. We see
Right.
the highly publicized votes and the fiery speeches, and we just assume that is the entirety of the job.
Yeah.
But to truly understand the legislative branch, we have to look at both screens at the exact same time. We need to see how the national drama impacts the local reality.
And that is our mission for this deep dive. We are taking the dense, intimidating congressional record specifically for Thursday, March 19th, 2026, and breaking it down so you can see how the proceedings in Washington, D.C. actually trickle down to affect your local community.
Right, so we are going to synthesize some incredibly intense, highly partisan floor debates. Stuff spanning immigration, working animals, and election laws.
A light day, in other words.
Oh, totally. But then we will pivot. We'll contrast all of that gridlock with the unifying, locally focused written statements that lawmakers quietly slip into the official record, far away from the television cameras.
And before we jump in, a quick heads up to you listening. The source material we are diving into today contains highly charged political debates with intense rhetoric from both sides of the aisle.
Definitely.
We are impartially reporting on the viewpoints contained in the congressional record to help you understand the dynamics at play. We are not endorsing any political side here, just acting as your guides through the legislative landscape.
Right, our job is just to look at the mechanics and the arguments. And speaking of arguments, we should probably head straight to the House floor.
Let's do it.
Because there's a piece of legislation that sounds universally appealing, but it somehow managed to spark a massive partisan firestorm.
Yeah, I mean, you would think a bill protecting dogs would be an easy win, but, well, this is Congress.
Right.
The bill is H.R. 4638, officially the Federal Working Animal Protection Act, though it was affectionately referred to in the debate as the BOWOW Act.
The BOWOW Act.
Yep, sponsored by Representative Calvert of California, and it did pass the House with a vote of 228 to 190.
And to understand the debate here, you really have to look at the emotional core of this bill.
Right.
The whole catalyst for this legislation was a story brought up by Representative McClintock of California. He talked about Freddie.
Oh, Freddie. Yeah, so Freddie is a 5-year-old Beagle who works as an agricultural detector dog for Customs and Border Protection at Dulles Airport.
Such a good boy.
A very good boy. And Freddie was just doing his job, sniffing out prohibited agricultural products when he was violently kicked by an Egyptian national.
Yeah, a guy who was trying to smuggle something like 117 pounds of illegal meat and produce into the country.
Exactly. And the man kicked the dog so hard that Freddie was literally lifted off the ground and suffered bruised ribs. Obviously, just a horrific thing to happen to a working animal.
Just awful. And the BOWOW Act is the direct reaction to that incident. It seeks to ensure swift punishment for anyone who harms a federal working animal.
Right.
Specifically, it makes harming a law enforcement animal an immediately deportable offense for a non-citizen.
But here is where the partisan divide erupts, right? It's over the legal mechanism.
Exactly. The bill requires only an admission of guilt or formal charges to trigger deportation rather than waiting for a full, formal legal conviction.
Okay, let's unpack this. If we look at the opposition, which was led by Representative Raskin of Maryland and Representative Jayapal of Washington, their argument is that this bill is entirely redundant.
Right. Because under existing law, the man who kicked Freddie was arrested, charged, tried, convicted, ordered to pay the $840 vet bill, and deported back to Egypt in exactly 3 days.
3 days. So if existing law already deported the offender in 72 hours, is this debate actually about Freddie the Beagle? Or is it a proxy war over how the federal government approaches due process for non-citizens?
Well, the opposition views it entirely as a proxy war. They argue that removing the conviction requirement strips away fundamental due process.
Like a slippery slope.
Exactly, a slippery slope. They're calling it a pipeline to mass deportations that bypasses the courts entirely.
Wow.
Yeah, and they also point to a broader context. They argue that the majority party is using this bill as a political distraction.
Right. Representative Raskin explicitly claimed this was a diversion from soaring gas prices and unauthorized military actions the president has taken in Iran.
Which he stated are costing up to $2 billion a day, by the way.
Yeah, it's like using a sledgehammer to swat a fly. I mean, the law worked in 3 days, but the push is to change the baseline requirements of the justice system anyway.
Exactly.
And the mechanics of how this bill was finalized on the floor are just as interesting. After the 228 to 190 vote passed, the record notes that a motion to reconsider was laid on the table.
Right, so a motion to reconsider is basically a request to vote on the bill again.
Okay,
When a member moves to lay it on the table, they're essentially killing that request immediately.
got it.
It's a parliamentary maneuver used right after a bill passes to lock the vote in. It effectively prevents the losing side from requesting another vote, finalizing the chamber's action right then and there. It's how the winning side slams the door shut.
Okay, so while that door shuts on the House floor, the agencies that rely on working animals like Freddie agencies like CBP and ICE are currently at the dead center of a massive, agonizing funding standoff.
Oh, yeah. The entire Department of Homeland Security is currently tied up in this fight, causing immediate, real-world consequences for everyday workers.
It's bad. Over in the House, Representative Dean of Pennsylvania pointed out that TSA checkpoints are literally closing in Philadelphia because agents haven't received a paycheck in over a month.
Over a month. Imagine that. People are working around the clock to keep travelers safe, entirely unpaid.
And the exact same paralysis is happening in the Senate, right?
Yeah, Senator Slotkin of Michigan actually attempted to pass a funding measure exclusively for those TSA agents. Like, just pay the people screening the bags.
Makes sense.
But Senator Moreno of Ohio objected. He demanded that ICE and CBP, including Homeland Investigations agents, be fully funded for 2 weeks while the broader negotiations continue.
Right, but then on the other side of that, you have Senator Schatz of Hawaii objecting to funding ICE without specific mandatory reforms attached to the money.
Exactly. Things like mandatory body cameras and new strict warrant requirements for agents.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. It seems incredibly cynical, but it feels like they are literally holding TSA paychecks hostage just to force the other side to cave on ICE funding. Is that actually the accepted strategy here?
I mean, yes. It is the brutal reality of legislative leverage. In Congress, if you have a highly controversial priority like funding an agency that the other party wants to reform or demanding sweeping policy changes, you rarely have the votes to pass it on its own.
Right.
So you tether it to something universally popular. You tie the controversial funding to the non-controversial funding.
Because if you just pass the popular bill, the pressure completely evaporates.
Precisely. The logic is that the political pain of keeping TSA agents unpaid will eventually become so great that the opposition will be forced to cave and agree to your terms on the controversial items.
That is wild.
If you sever the popular items and pass them separately, you lose your leverage. Nothing gets agreed to until everything is agreed to. It is an incredibly high-stakes game of chicken with real people's livelihoods hanging in the balance.
Man. And while the House clashes over immigration enforcement and the Senate gridlocks on DHS funding, the Senate floor is simultaneously being consumed by another massive partisan battle.
Oh, yes.
This one is about the rules of the democratic process itself.
Right, so this is S-1383, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act.
Commonly called the Save America Act.
Exactly. And procedurally, cloture motions have been filed by the majority leader. That's a mechanism to force an end to debate. And the Senate is actively debating the motion to concur with amendments.
Okay, hold on. Cloture motions and motions to concur, that sounds like a lot of parliamentary red tape.
Yeah.
In plain English, what is the majority leader actually trying to force here?
Right, fair question.
Right.
In plain English, the Senate operates on unlimited debate, which is the filibuster.
Right.
A cloture motion is just the formal process of hitting the brakes.
Right.
It forces the debate to end so they can actually vote.
Oh.
And the motion to concur means the Senate is looking at changes the House made to the bill and deciding whether to shake hands and agree to them. So the majority leader is basically forcing a final showdown on this legislation.
Got it. So the Republican argument for this bill is being championed by Senator Lee of Utah, Senator Cornyn of Texas, and Senator Schmidt of Missouri.
Yeah, and they are framing this as pure, undeniable common sense.
Right. The bill requires documentary proof of United States citizenship, like a photo ID or a birth certificate, in order to register to vote. Senator Cornyn explicitly cited a poll noting that 71% of Americans support the measure, arguing it is the only way to guarantee non-citizens are kept off the voter rolls.
But the Democratic opposition, voiced by Senator Sanders of Vermont, Senator Bennett of Colorado, and Senator Blunt Rochester of Delaware, sees it completely differently.
Totally differently.
They're calling this a voter suppression bill disguised as an election security measure. They argue it is designed to solve a problem that statistically does not exist, since non-citizen voting is already illegal and incredibly rare.
Right. And more importantly, they point out massive logistical hurdles hidden in the fine print. They brought up a staggering statistic.
Oh yeah, this is wild.
Almost 70 million women in America do not currently have a birth certificate that matches their current legal name.
70 million.
Primarily due to taking a new surname upon marriage. So the opponents argue that requiring strict documentary proof could immediately disenfranchise tens of millions of legally eligible female voters who simply don't have perfectly matching paperwork on hand.
Because getting those documents updated is a massive bureaucratic headache.
Oh, absolutely.
But, this debate isn't just a simple left versus right issue. It raises an important question about how federal mandates impact diverse local geographies.
Yeah.
We actually saw a fascinating nuance emerge from within the Republican Party itself. Senator Murkowski of Alaska came out in opposition to the bill.
Yeah, and this makes so much sense when you think about it. Imagine trying to return a package, but the only post office is a 3-hour bush plane flight away. How does a sweeping federal mandate written in Washington, D.C. account for the reality of living in the Alaskan wilderness?
Well, it generally doesn't. Senator Murkowski pointed out that the bill would force rural Alaskans to travel to understaffed, incredibly distant state offices just to show physical documents in person.
Which is insane.
In her state, where many communities aren't connected by roads, that is not just an inconvenience. It is a near impossible financial and logistical barrier to participating in democracy.
It's incredible. So you have this intense high-stakes battle over who gets to vote and how, playing out right alongside the fight over whether TSA agents get their paychecks. It really paints a picture of a deeply divided, deeply stressed legislative body.
It does. But if you step off the Senate floor and actually read the formal written record for the day, you realize all that shouting is only half of the story.
Right.
There's a whole other world happening in the background called the extensions of remarks.
And for those who don't know, these are formal written statements that lawmakers submit directly into the congressional record without ever reading them out loud on the floor.
Yeah, because when you look at the mechanics of Congress, lawmakers are essentially localized public relations machines as well as legislators.
Right.
Submitting these remarks is a brilliant piece of constituent service. It allows a representative to formally honor a local citizen, business, or event by entering their name into the official history of the United States.
Which is pretty cool.
It really is. It creates a permanent record housed in the Library of Congress. It generates positive local news coverage back home, and it costs absolutely zero floor time. It is virtue signaling in the best sense of the word.
So true. Let me give you some exact examples of what we found hiding in the written record for this day.
Yeah, let's hear them.
While not spoken on the floor, Representative Castor of Florida submitted a statement emphasizing the legacy of Elihu and Carolyn Brayboy, the owners of Chief's Creole Cafe, and Candy Lowe Jones. She highlighted their vital investments in Black-owned businesses across the Tampa Bay area during Black History Month.
See, that is the deliberate effort to ensure that local economic leaders are permanently etched into national history. It contrasts so sharply with the national gridlock we just talked about.
Exactly. Here is another one. While not spoken on the floor, Representative Hoyer of Maryland submitted a statement emphasizing the legacy of the late Paul Marchand, honoring his extraordinary life's work transforming national disability rights policy.
Honoring a life dedicated to advocacy, completely devoid of partisan bickering.
It's refreshing. And one more. While not spoken on the floor, Representative Matsui of California submitted a statement emphasizing the 50th anniversary of the Sacramento Food Bank and Family Services.
Just taking a moment out of the day consumed by international military funding and immigration to simply say thank you to a local food bank that has fed a community for half a century.
Yeah. So what does this all mean? When you look at these two screens side by side, you have to wonder which is the real Congress. Is the true nature of this institution found in the bitter, performative fights on camera over the Save America Act and the BOWOW Act? Or is the real Congress found in the quiet, diligent work of writing into the historic record to ensure that local food banks, civil rights advocates, and community restaurant owners are remembered forever?
I think Congress is a machine built for friction. But it is also composed of people who are deeply tied to the specific hometowns they represent.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And observing this dual nature leads to a rather provocative thought, one inspired by a warning given on the floor by Representative Schweikert of Arizona.
Right, he brought up the actual math.
He did. While the chamber was engulfed in the debate over the working animal bill, Representative Schweikert stood up and pointed out a terrifying demographic reality.
Which is?
The Social Security Trust Fund will be completely empty in exactly 6.5 years.
6.5 years, that is basically tomorrow in legislative time.
Literally tomorrow. And when it empties, it will trigger an automatic 24% cut to benefits for seniors across the board. It would double the poverty rate among the elderly, all while the national debt continues to surge at a rate of over $2 trillion a year.
That is a staggering reality check.
It really is. And I want to leave you with this to ponder. With Congress consuming so much of its limited oxygen and time-locked in bitter partisan combat over national wedge issues like the exact due process requirements for kicking a Beagle or gridlocking the entire Department of Homeland Security, how will this legislative body ever find the time, the focus, and the bipartisan willpower to address the quiet ticking demographic time bombs that will eventually decimate every single American's wallet?
Man, it really makes you wonder if we are staring so hard at the blockbuster explosions that we are missing the foundation of the theater cracking beneath us.
Exactly.
Well, if you want to dive deeper into these debates, track the roll call votes, or read the full extensions of remarks for yourself, you can look up the complete congressional record for today's date, March 19th, 2026, by visiting congress.gov.
Yep, it's all there.
Keep your eyes on both sides of the screen. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.